This is Suzanne A. Wells, and welcome to episode number 105 of eBay the Right Way. Today's date is March 22nd, 2023. Today I'm talking with my neighbor here in Greenville, South Carolina, Leslie, and she has the most amazing story about a painting she found. A few quick announcements. Update on the premium library. Members and free trial people, remember to check the monthly updates for new content added each week. So far in March, I have added a brand spotlight lesson. This brand is all the rage in home decor right now. The company was founded in 2002, so it has a dedicated following after 2 decades in existence. Learn about what their products look like and how much they sell for on eBay. Maybe you are passing by some real gems because you don't know about this brand. Another installment of the hat course has been added. This item doesn't even look like a hat and is often mixed in with the plush. I have found it twice in the past few years, both times in the plush section. So this is another case of you don't know what you don't know. Both times it cost about $1 and sold for around $40. And both times it sold very quickly, so this is a highly desired item. I have added another shipping tip, something you may not know about, and in progress is another lesson in the Mid-Century Modern course. That course now has 9 lessons about all kinds of different items and over 2 hours of instruction. So if you want to learn more about vintage items, this course will be very helpful. And just a side note, because you know me, I'm always tracking things, the premium library will be 5 years old this spring and now has 580 videos and 151 hours of instruction. Most of the content is evergreen, meaning it won't change. Lessons about company histories, items that will always be collectible, selling strategies and concepts, those types of things. And as time goes by, I focus more and more on evergreen content because it just makes sense to provide information that will be true forever, not hype or fads that fade quickly. The bulletins now include a newly discovered BOLO that you may not have heard about. So if you watch nothing else, you'll be learning new things in the twice a month bulletins. So I'm always working on the premium library in the background, and I review the content every month to keep it updated and remove material that is obsolete. There really is nothing like the premium library if you want to up your eBay game and stay informed. Okay, commercial over. Now for the conversation with Leslie.
Hello, eBay sellers. Today we have Leslie with us, and we actually met at the first Greenville Resellers Group meeting back in January. So we're local, but we've never run into each other yet. So,
It'll happen.
How are you doing this morning, Leslie?
I am doing well. It's beautiful out. Spring has sprung, I think, a little early.
Yes, it was 80 degrees yesterday.
I know.
And we are recording this on March 8th. So hopefully we're ahead of schedule. You have to get through the pollen now, the lovely yellow coating on everything. So once that's over, then spring is sprung and we can get outside and do stuff and not come back inside coated with yellow powder.
Exactly.
Unless you have to work in your yard, which Yeah, I hate that, but
Yeah,
it is what it is in the South.
definitely. I've moved around quite a bit, and I cultivate allergies wherever I go to different things.
Okay, that's fun.
So it's always kind of a surprise. I'll see what I'm allergic to this year.
Well, let's go ahead and jump in with some of the standard questions so the listeners can get a feel for who you are and how you got here. When did you start selling on eBay, and what was the catalyst that pushed you to do that?
So I am relatively new. I started last year in earnest, probably in June. I probably started collecting things and thinking about it for maybe a month or two before that. I've always sort of enjoyed thrifting, or, just interesting items. And even I was thinking about, like, when I got started just buying things at thrift stores. And it was probably when I was in college, a poor college student, a poor graduate student. Um, and I had to thrift out of necessity. And I just started enjoying the thrill of the hunt, you know. But I never sold anything. I mean, I've had yard sales over the years, from moving around and stuff, but I've never sold anything on eBay until last June. So
Okay,
I
so
just
just for some perspective, what year were you born?
1967.
Okay, so you're just a year younger than me. So you were in
Yeah,
college like mid
late
80s.
80s.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so a
yeah,
while back.
yeah,
Wasn't like 2
yeah.
years ago.
Right, right.
Yeah,
Yeah. So it was a lot different, as far as, there were no platforms to sell on. Maybe I would have done it. You
right.
know, I think I fantasized about having a thrift store of my own. When I've kind of meandered through different parts of my life. But I don't think that's probably for me. But in the controlled eBay world, like, I can make my store as big or as small as I want. And
Mhm.
so that appealed to me, that I could just sort of make it what I needed it to be.
Yeah, and owning a store is a completely different animal. You've got all the tax stuff, you've got employees, payroll, you get somebody trained and they quit. You've got, all the intake stuff. Like it's a lot.
And space, even just finding a space, I think, is probably one of the barriers to most people opening a business. So
Right. Yeah, rent can be really high. That's why I love
yeah,
being able to do this at home. Like you don't have to rent a storage unit. You don't have to rent space for a store. It's just
yeah,
somewhere in your house.
yeah, yeah,
So, okay.
yeah.
And so last summer, 2022, what was the thing that just made you say, okay, time to start selling on eBay?
Yeah. So I think I've been a lifelong learner, and so I like to learn about things, and I started contemplating selling. I maybe had listed my first item at this point, which was a new with tags designer T-shirt, and it got returned. Like, my first sale was returned, so I was
Oh,
like, "That's a
no.
little discouraging." But I really like, not necessarily antiques, but vintage glassware and vintage uh, kitchen gadgets, and houseware things. So I went into this antique store, a big antique mall, that I had passed by many times, but their hours never coincided with when I was passing by there. And so this one day, it was open and I was near. So I stopped and I wanted to go in and look at the tags on things and just look at, um, what things are, learn about. It really is just an education if you go into those stores, if they've written on the tag that this is, you know, this type of glassware from this era, or, and the prices. I also, you have to learn about, how much things are worth, or at least how much people think they're worth. Um,
Yeah, and that's a
so,
good field trip to just
mhm,
look and learn. I used to do that at the mall, like at Nordstrom and the more expensive
Right. Like
stores,
what
just to
products and
see what are these brands and what are the
Mhm.
labels look like and what's the retail price. And it's a good way to learn, and everything's all there
Yeah.
together. So you're
Yep.
not sitting at your
Yeah.
computer trying to figure it out. You just take a field trip. That's a good idea.
Yeah. Yeah. So I went into this it's a large, one of those large antique malls with different booths, and it's, it's got a lot of little aisles and it's circuitous, and like you get in there, and I think I became immediately slightly overwhelmed. um, I just there was just a lot. So I decided to have a strategy and just go around the outer aisle
Mm-hmm.
and not go in every little twist and turn in all the different booths. And then when I got, I figured if I got to the end of that, I could, kind of work my way, whatever time I had left to go in there. So as I'm going around the outer aisle, that's along the walls. And so a lot of artwork was hanging on the walls. And I was about halfway through, and this building is probably at least 75, 100 yards. Like it's big.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw this painting, and it's a portrait of a woman that's seated. It's a fairly large painting. It's like maybe 3 by 4 feet.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it had a tag on it. And I was just drawn to it. It was a very nice painting. And I read the tag, and it said it was by an artist named Bonnie Roth from Maryland. And the price was $200,
Mm-hmm.
which it was worth every penny of that. But I wasn't necessarily there to buy things, especially not a $200 painting. But I really was drawn to it. I stood in front of it for a long time. I took photos of it, and I thought, I might want to buy that, just for myself, not for resale. And so I really just stood there and contemplated it. And then I got a phone call. So I was standing in front of it, taking a phone call. And it was an important call. So I went ahead and took it. And I found myself in front of that painting for probably 10, 15 minutes. And I left, and it was still on my mind. And I thought, I'll go back and get it. But I'm like, this is a giant painting. Like, this is a conversation piece. If someone comes into my house and sees this painting, they're going to ask me about this woman in the painting and about this painting. And I said to myself, I'm like, I'm going to have to come up with a story for her if I hang that in my house. And so, I was pondering that. And the more I thought about it, and the more I thought in my head about this woman, it occurred to me that she seemed familiar to me. And that was why I was really drawn to it. So later that night, when I was going to bed, I decided that she looked like someone that I knew. I moved here from North Carolina, and I decided that she was really somebody that I knew, or I knew of her. I don't know. It was
Yeah, it's
just a
like it was
strange
a
thing.
nagging feeling because you told this
It really,
story at the meetup. It was just
yeah,
like a nagging feeling of, why am I drawn to this? And I think
yeah,
I know her. And it
yeah,
just, you couldn't put it
exactly.
aside. It just kept bugging you.
Exactly. So this is like 11 o'clock that night, and I'm getting ready to go to sleep. It was a Friday night, so I'd stayed up and watched a movie, and just, was getting ready to go to bed. And it occurred to me that she reminded me of a woman that I knew when I lived in North Carolina. And I didn't know her well. Like, we weren't close friends. We were more acquaintances. Our husbands were members of a cycling group. And so when we went to events for that group, I met her. So kind of a friend of a friend, or an acquaintance made through, an affiliation with this group. So, but when I met her, and I met her probably about 17 years ago, because she was a labor and delivery nurse, and I was pregnant when I met her. So,
Okay.
and she, we were at an outside event, and she noticed that I might have been a little uncomfortable. And she said, I think you might be a little dehydrated. I think we should go back inside and get some water. And so I was she made an impression on me. She was just very, very sweet, but also just, she's her personality, I was drawn to it. But I really didn't get to know her anything beyond that and these meetings. Probably I can count on one hand the times we spent together in the course of, I don't know, 15 years. So anyway, I am friends with her on Facebook. So I sent her a Facebook message saying, I saw this painting and it reminded me of you. And I just was like, if it's not you, it's just interesting. It reminded me of you. The woman in the painting was much younger than the woman that I know. And I told my husband this as he was going to bed, and he said, who do you think that looks like? And he thought it was nuts. He thought I was completely nuts. And so we went to sleep, and I got up the next morning and I had a reply from her, and she said that it was indeed her. And I got chills, like, because it was that day, the reason she went on Facebook, because it was a Saturday, and it's not like everybody doesn't get on social media every day, like might be when you're in front of your computer for other reasons or whatever. But that morning she had gone on there to make a post that she makes every year on the birth date of her first child, who passed away when he was 3. He died in a drowning accident. And so to honor him, she would always, post his photo in his memory. And that it's not a sad occasion anymore. It's more just a warm, memory.
Yeah, just to remember and honor. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that morning when she got up to make that post, she saw my message and saw the painting, and she was just blown away, because the painting was painted in the mid-'80s, and she was a nursing student, and she sat for a portrait class for a well-known artist named Cedric Egeli. And Bonnie Roth, the painter of this painting, was a student in that class and painted this portrait. And it was one of her favorite paintings. And she actually agreed, my friend's name is Nora, and she agreed to sell Nora the painting after she used it for some shows. Mm-hmm. And this is in the 80s. And she, went on to use it in some shows, and it actually went on to hang in the Maryland Hall of Art in Annapolis for many years. Mm-hmm. And in the meantime, Nora finished nursing school and moved to North Carolina from Maryland. And so she kind of lost track of the painting and lost track of Bonnie. And then Bonnie passed away, and she went back because she still has family and connections in Maryland, and she couldn't find it. And so she asked everybody to, keep an eye out, because she was looking for it. And how it ended up in an antique mall in Taylor's, South Carolina, I don't know.
Well, and there's another little piece of information.
Yes. So
what she's wearing in the painting, and how that's significant to her son.
And it came out. So she was blown away by it and posted about it. And in the painting, she is wearing, I believe it's an amethyst necklace, a pendant with a honeysuckle setting. And I think it was designed, from what I understand, it was designed for her in memory of her son who passed away, because he liked honeysuckle. And so she was wearing that in the painting. And that would have been his 49th birthday, that day that she saw that.
And I hope this is giving everyone else chills, because
it still gives me chills. Like, I have them right now.
That little boy's working behind the scenes, and I think he put all this together.
I think he tapped me on the shoulder when I was standing in front of that, and was like, this is something you have to pay attention to.
Right. Like, and the day it happened was his day that she did the memorial on Facebook. And then here she sees this picture, this painting of her with
from that time,
a necklace that is all about him. And it's just, I don't believe in coincidences.
Yeah.
I think things happen for a reason. And that when you told that story, everyone was just like, oh my gosh, that's just overwhelming. Yeah.
Right. Right. And so reselling to me, I mean, it is a business. I am approaching it, in a very pragmatic fashion. However, I am completely open to every story of everything that I encounter. And I think that was the trigger to be like, this is a business, but it's also, I mean, I think the word journey is kind of overused sometimes, my journey in reselling.
Right.
But it's an adventure, and it's a, experience that you just have to be open to it. And I think that's probably, I don't know, that's probably what made me realize that I should just go for it, because I was still on the fence about it.
Mhm.
And I was thinking I should just go for it. And so I have. And I know
And
that's a long story, but
you
you
have
know,
no idea everything you sell could have some kind of story about something nostalgic,
exactly.
or it's meaningful to the buyer. They've been looking for this, their grandmother had one, whatever it is. I
Right,
get
right,
feedback and messages like that all the time.
right,
It's really what drives me to keep doing this. Um,
right.
I could probably make a lot more money if I had a different business model, but I
Mhm.
just love that. I feel like I'm serving a purpose. I'm not
Right.
just keeping things out of the landfill. That's a good
Hmm.
side effect, but you know, the nostalgia of things, you can't put a price on that.
Mm-mm.
And you found this thing for 50 cents and you sold it for $30, and then you get a message from the buyer like, "Oh, I had this as a child. I've been looking for this." And it's just going to sit on a shelf, but it just brings back such warm memories. What other business can you be in and get that kind of feedback about how you're spending your time and energy? It's just, I can't think of
Exactly.
another type of business where you would do that, where
Right. And I
have that.
think it makes up for any of the, not so pleasant experiences of reselling, right?
Yeah,
Those stories that are fulfilling kind of overshadow the, annoyance of somebody saying it didn't fit, even though you had all of the measurements in there, or,
yeah,
or just, whatever sort of negative feedback, and I don't mean specifically like eBay negative feedback, but just whatever sort of negative involvement, or engagement. I think it's all overshadowed by any of those, special stories.
right.
um, so those negative things are just the nuts and bolts of doing business.
So, and you somehow got the painting back to Nora.
I
You didn't
did.
sell
So
it,
that
you got it
morning,
back to
my
her.
husband was in the shower when I got that message from her, and I went busting in the bathroom and I said, "It's her," and I said, "So when you're ready, you're going to go with me, and we're going to go buy it." And I had seen it on a Friday at around noon, and they didn't open until Saturday at 11. So I don't remember when they closed. But I had this like fear that somebody had gone and bought it the day before after I left. Um, so I was like, nobody needs another plot twist in this story. We just need to go and get it.
Right.
So, and we did. And it's interesting because when we were checking out, the antique store man said that they referred to the painting, as a different name, and I can't remember what it was now. And he said, "We're selling so and so," and I said, "No, actually, her name is Nora." And it's
Uh-huh.
going to the person who is the subject of this painting.
Uh-huh.
So, and I did give Nora's number. She gave me permission to give it to them to give to the seller, because it was, a booth. Um, and I'm not aware if they've connected in any way, like how it ended up there. But I did try to make that connection for them. So, and we finally, being such a large painting, and we do go back to North Carolina to visit. My mother-in-law is still there, um, but it's so large, and I didn't want to damage it. Like, it's pretty hard to carry it in your car with other people and other things. So back at Thanksgiving, my husband went to pick up his mom, And he was leaving here with a basically empty car. So I said, you need to take it, even though I want to be there when she gets it. As much as I want to see that, it needs to get to her sooner than later. So I had it in my house since June till Thanksgiving.
Mhm.
So but yeah, that story, I mean, and I've had other stories that really, but that was really the catalyst.
Yeah.
And it's
Being at
still
the right place at the right time, somebody from the other side nudging you to do things. It's like,
yeah.
I totally believe in all that. And that we all have these experiences that can't be explained.
Yeah. And I feel personally, there was a period there where I was feeling a little bit closed off. Like I had sort of closed off I don't know if it was self-preservation or something, but this reminded me that if you're just open to, I mean, that sounds a little bit woo-woo, but like open to the universe and what it's telling you, listen. Or, I mean, if you're religious and, it's God, or it's, some kind of thing that's driving you to, be open. And,
Yeah. Yeah. There's
listen.
more to the world than what we can see and hear. And, there's more going on behind the scenes. So
exactly.
I just love that story and wanted you to share that, because that was kind of your entrance into reselling, and you didn't even resell that item.
I didn't resell it at all, but I have been open to, even though I at times I would feel like maybe a little intimidated by artwork. But I have become a rescuer of art, and I have sold some, but I don't list it all that often because I have to work out exactly how I'm going to ship it before I list it. That's not old hat to me yet. Like every item of a different size or type becomes, a new challenge that I have to master before I throw myself into doing it. But I do have some other artwork that I've rescued from various places, the trash.
Yeah.
That turns out they are, I found one that I just identified, like it's from 1902, I think.
Oh,
and
wow.
it's a pastel piece. And I can't, the last name is Snowden. It's a woman. But I had to do a little detective work, and then, engage some online resources to identify it. And I have it hanging in my guest room right now, but eventually I'll probably sell it. I'm not attached to it, but I'm glad that it didn't end up in the trash.
Right.
So,
well, let's talk about some things that you actually did sell.
Okay. What do you want to know?
Well, you're admittedly kind of new to this, so maybe things that surprised you, or you're like, I'm just going to throw this out there and see what happens.
Yeah, I think I've sold probably the maybe not weirdest thing, but I did sell some vintage staples.
Staples.
I find, yeah, it's strange. I find I'm drawn to like weird little desk items, or like those junk drawer items that people, everybody has. And so I found these staples, and they were probably from the 50s. And they were marked with the office supply that they came from. And I was like, and I looked it up, and people sell them. And so I was like, I'll just, put a comparable price on and see how it goes. And somebody bought them, and they sold fairly quickly. And I was like, I don't know if that was just because it was a new listing and they happened to be looking for it. I mean, I guess if you have a vintage stapler, you need vintage staples.
Well, so, they were in a box, right?
They were. I had 2 boxes of them, and one maybe had 2 rows taken out of it, and the other one was full.
Well, maybe they just bought it for the box to display. Maybe they collect old office stuff, or maybe they
the
work
label
for that company, or their dad worked for that company. And the only way you're going to know is to ask the buyer, like, why did you buy this?
Yeah. So that surprised me. And I think as a new seller, all of the firsts are kind of exciting in their own way, right? Your first international sale, or your first big sale. And each of my firsts has had its probably twists and turns. Like I said, my very first sale was returned, but I sold it again. I relisted it and sold it again. It was not a big deal. And it was a learning thing, right? And my largest sale to date, which, you know, isn't by everybody's standards, isn't that large, but it was $180 for an item that I bought for $10 at a thrift store. It was the brand was Venetia, and it was an Angora and mink sweater. It was like a lined sweater jacket with a mink trim on the front. But the rest of the body of the sweater was Angora. And so I looked up comps, and they were in that range, about 150 to 180. And that one sold from the time I bought it, listed it, sold it, and it was delivered was 3 days. I bought it on a Tuesday and listed it. I sold it on Wednesday and shipped it, and they received it on Friday. So I guess 4 days. But within a half an hour of receiving it, they put in a return request. I was like, so this is how it works with clothes.
So, what was the reason? Just didn't fit?
Said it was too small. And so I obviously I accepted the return, but they never returned it. So my funds were held for that, whatever 30-day period they have to return it. And I just waited, and I waited with that large $180 sale sitting there with, like, I can't touch it, and I don't get it.
Like every day you're checking, have they shipped it? Have they shipped it? I just had one of those drop off today. It was a return request like 3 weeks ago, and I'm just watching, and hasn't shipped. And if they don't ship it back by March 7th, then too bad. And it just dropped off. They never shipped it back. So you have to retrain your thinking when you get these return requests. It's like, okay, well, let's see if they actually return it. Because I would say in my experience, 50% of the return requests, they never return it.
It might have been one of those where they kind of wanted to rent it, wear it, and then return it,
wear it for a photo shoot and then return it.
Right. Because the return request was so immediate. I mean, it was, I think I looked at the thing, and it had been delivered, and they, opened that request within a half an hour
of
its delivery. So I was like, well, I mean, I guess they were waiting for it, and maybe they had a purpose they wanted to use it, but it didn't fit. So they, maybe they'd ordered multiple things and see what works. I mean, I guess if there's returns, that's a way to shop, which sometimes shopping online, that's the way to shop. But anyway, all those things were going through my head, but also this is the first time in my biggest sale. Like it was a lot of, I don't know, I went through just a lot of different processes of thinking, how am I going to handle that if it comes back not in the shape that I sent it? So that was my first big sale, and my first big sale return that never got returned. So
return request. So you just kind of wait, and then it's such a relief when their time is up. Well, the ball was in your court and you didn't do anything. So sometimes they'll contact you after the 30 days and be like, oh, I didn't get around to it. Will you still take this back? And that's when you can refer them to eBay.
Right.
I usually say, thank you again for your purchase. The 30-day window for returns has closed. You can certainly reach out to eBay for your options. And I just put it over on eBay's plate and let them deal with it.
Right. Well, luckily they haven't come back after the fact, and that was like November. So I hope that it never comes back, but
at this point,
I'll have an answer.
They don't want it. Maybe they can resell it themselves.
Right. And they maybe chose to do that, or maybe they were like, it's not that small. Maybe I'll lose some weight, or, I don't know.
Right.
That's good. I don't know. I don't know what happened, or they were just
kind of an obscure brand. It wasn't like a well-known brand, and it was just a funky looking item that you had a gut feeling about. And how much did it cost?
It was $10, $9.99, and I sold it for at full price. They didn't make an offer or anything. Full price of $180 plus shipping, and so happily I got that sale after all.
That worked out. So has that deterred you against selling clothing?
No, although I feel like everything is a learning process. So I made sure, because it was a sweater, sweaters can be forgiving. However, it was kind of a sweater jacket that was lined. So I feel like maybe the outside measurements were a little bit generous, because I do the flat lay, so like, for example, the underarm to underarm measurement. For some reason, I don't like to say pit to pit.
I don't either. I just don't like that. I say
across chest,
across
underarm,
the bust or something like that. I don't know. When I hear pit to pit, I just think of dirty, stinky sweat.
Yeah. I don't know. There's certain words that I have, everybody has them, I guess, but aversion to saying that. But anyway, I realized that an item like that might need to be measured at the lining at that point. So, it was a learning thing, and I, went from there. It doesn't discourage me from listing clothing. However, my current photo setup, I don't have the easiest way to photograph clothing just yet, but I'm getting there. Every month, if I make a certain amount, I will invest in maybe another lighting thing, or, because when you're first starting out, you have to pick and choose what tools you can afford to buy for your business. Even if you can, they're business expenses, but if you don't have the money to pay those expenses in the first place, it doesn't matter, how it affects you tax wise.
Yeah, that's one thing I like about eBay, and people getting started with it, is it's not like selling, Pampered Chef or 31 bags or whatever. It's because you don't have to buy a starter kit. You don't have to invest any money up front if you don't want to. You can just start selling your own stuff. Figure out how to take pictures that are good enough for eBay. I mean, hopefully the item's not going to be out there that long. You want your pictures to look as good as possible. And if you look at completed listings, you'll see, like, how did that item sell? Like, what were they thinking?
Right.
So
but if somebody wanted it and they knew what it really
doesn't have to be
like.
perfect, but we can be perfectionists, and we want it to be as good as possible. But you don't really need anything. You don't have to go out and buy all these things when you first get started. I get that question all the time from people who email me, and they're like, what exactly do I need? And it's like, you can get your priority supplies from the post office for free. You don't really have to buy a whole bunch of supplies. Figure out your photography as good as possible. And now with these background removal tools and photo editing programs, that a lot of them are free, you can, it doesn't matter what your background is. You can take that out and you can adjust the color.
Exactly. And I did invest in Photo Room. Like, I tried the free trial, and then I'm like, okay, this will work for me.
Yeah. So, and bring the lighting up, like with exposure and all kinds of things you can do with it. So it's not like it was back in the day when we didn't have all that.
Right.
You can just invest on the back end and like a program that will help you enhance your photos rather than the backdrop and the lighting and all that stuff. So you came into it at a good time.
Right. And speaking of it, like back in the day, I don't know if I would have been able to do it. Like, I feel like people like you have paved the way, and then, tools and resources and, just even the development of the internet in its current state, the pathway to that all, sort of paved the way to make it easier for people to start doing this.
And when I started with stuff around my house, of course, and then men's golf shirts, because that is what I was finding so much of. And as a matter of fact, this month is my 20th anniversary.
Wow, happy anniversary.
Selling on eBay. And I'm going to do a course for the premium library on golf shirts, because that's like what I started with, and they're still good sellers. And anyway, so sorry, I digress. But I would just fold the shirts into a nice little square like you see in the retail stores.
Right.
And had it on a piece of poster board with a floor lamp. And that's what I did. Like, we didn't have all these light rings and backdrops.
Right.
We didn't have all these supplies, and there's a whole industry that revolves around what eBay sellers need, which I'll be the first one to tell you, you don't need all that stuff. That's just people trying to make money off eBay sellers. But you can figure it out with.
I think, you just figure out what works best for you. And,
I found one of those, I don't know what you call it, maybe a task lamp for like construction workers use them. It's just on a stand and has a big bright, I guess it's a halogen light.
Like with the little metal cage around.
Yeah, I found one of those at a thrift store for like $5. And I'm like, I could use this to take my pictures. So I used that for a while. And, you don't have to buy a whole bunch of stuff to get into this. You really don't.
Yeah. So, but each time I, improve, my pictures look better than they did the last time. And, and now I've gotten to the point where I probably should go back and retake some of the early pictures. One of the things I didn't have was a steamer for the clothes, and I had some wrinkly clothes. And it was funny because I was just pondering that about some of the very early listings. And I have set up myself a little inventory system, and like, I started with number 1, like, you know what I mean? I have some other numbers, so I know generally, but, I just started with number 1. And I was looking at it, I was like, you know what? I should probably go back and take pictures of those early things. And number 2 sold this morning, or last night. They paid this morning. So it was one of those things. And so this is another thing. And I don't know if it's just, I think it's a phenomenon that people have mentioned when I've listened to other podcasts or other YouTube videos, is items in your inventory or in, that you have listed that don't seem to be getting any interest or action. If you just think about them or pick them up and move them, or for some reason, something that I haven't thought about for months, and I look at it and think about it, and then it sells. I'm like, is that Siri? How they people...
how do they? That happened to me the day we had our meetup. I was in my inventory closet getting something to ship, and I noticed this quilt. Like, I've had this listed forever. I wish somebody would just buy this. And would you believe I had sent an offer a couple of days before, and they accepted the offer and bought it right after I had that thought. And I thought, is my home haunted? Are there like eBay angels around me making things
They're
happen?
listening to my thoughts. Because I mean, I'm pretty sure I didn't say it out loud, but
right. Well, I didn't either. I was just like, could someone please buy this? This is such a nice quilt. And then, so now I'm like, okay, I'm going to go around and look at all my inventory and think, somebody needs to buy these shoes. Somebody needs to buy this.
Like, just hold it in your hand or think on it really hard. Yeah. Manifest.
It's like the power of intention. If you really get in that flow of intention and doing things deliberately,
right?
Putting those thoughts and desires out there into the universe, things can happen. Yeah. So, what are some other things that you've sold along the way?
I've sold, so I've learned that I don't like selling shoes. I like buying shoes, but I don't like selling shoes. And so I haven't sold any shoes. I have maybe a couple pairs listed, but every time I ponder it, it's just a no. It's a no for me.
Okay. Well, that's great because there are plenty of other Greenville resellers that will take care of that. Yeah.
Right. And that's another way to cut my thrifting short. Cause I was telling you before that I take a long time in a store. Mostly, I mean, I like to say that it's because I'm new and everything is, it's not old hat to me and I have to, comp it and do everything, while I'm there, but, I can skip the shoes. So that cuts a whole aisle, I might look there just to see, but I'm not going to stop and take much time.
Well, and I
So, but I
think we
do.
have the same mentality of it's just I enjoy being in the thrift store. They usually have pretty good
Mhm.
music on, and I just take my
Mhm.
time, and it's almost like a mindless activity, like driving.
Right.
I'm just going through everything. I'm not in a hurry. I'm never in a hurry. I'm usually
Mhm.
there hours before they close, so that's never an issue. And I just don't like to be in a hurry with anything. I don't
Yeah.
like being
Yeah.
rushed. And I quit taking people with me to thrift because I take too long. And, you know, it's just, but that's the way I enjoy it. I like it that way.
Right.
And
Right.
that's why I'm not a good candidate for the bins because
Yeah.
it's just not, or even bin time. We have those stores
Mhm.
here.
Yeah. I haven't been to them very much, but I don't think they're not my speed.
Yeah, and you're not going to find, a 1960s pair of granny panties at
Right.
bin time because that's all like new stuff and Amazon
Right.
returns. And
Right.
anyway,
My few times there, I've found a lot of pet items
uh-huh.
like dog collars or carriers or just things for your dog
Yeah, I
or
just
your cat.
love finding like plush that has a really old tag on it. And you get out your reading glasses and like, what year
Mhm.
was this made? Oh, 1982. Yeah. Or like I found a bag of Christmas ornaments at Miracle Hill a few days
Mhm.
ago, and it was all these Hallmark satin covered
Oh,
plastic, like it wasn't breakable. And
yeah.
the whole bag was $1.50. And I'm like, I didn't even look at it. I looked at one and I think it was strawberry shortcake 1982 or
Mhm.
something like that. And it's like, okay, this has one thing in it that's good. I'm just not looking any further.
Yeah.
Just
It'll
take
be
it
worth
and then
it.
have a little reveal when I get home, like what's in here.
Right.
So,
Right.
that's what excites me is finding the
Mhm.
old stuff
Mhm.
because you don't usually have a lot of competition on it. Doesn't usually get returned. And it's just fun, especially if you
Right.
alive during that time and like who Garfield and Ziggy are.
Mhm. Mhm. And you know that somebody is going to be nostalgic about that and want that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I guess some of the other things I've sold, I do like selling accessories. I bought um, four Moroccan concho belts at
Uh-huh.
an estate sale in my neighborhood. Come to find out, like I've been in here for about 5 years, a little over 5 years, and I one of my neighbors, I told her about it, and she remembered that woman that lived there was kind of an eccentric dresser and liked to
Oh, like a
entertain.
gypsy.
Yeah, she liked to entertain and travel. I mean, it was clearly a house full of things from travels and adventures, and it was really interesting. So but I was also on a very tight budget. Like I had to budget. So all I could afford were those four belts, and maybe I think I bought a scarf, but just accessories. And so just knowing that, I think my friend mentioned that she would entertain and she would be wearing something that she got on her recent travels. And so she very well could have been at, a party wearing one of those belts.
Yeah.
So I think I still have four of them. I bought four of them. Three were brown and one was black, and I haven't listed the black one yet. Um, and I'm learning about how to list things when you have multiples. Like I feel like things like that, they're not multiple of the exact same item. They are the same, but I felt like a challenge whether it was challenging to decide whether I should say four available and, put the variations,
Mm-hmm.
or just, but I'm so new at it and listing is still not that easy. I just listed one and sold it. Then I listed the next one and sold it. And then I listed the next one and sold it. And I haven't listed the last one.
Well, and there is a divide among sellers about how to do that. So if you find 5 identical things, what comes to mind for me was some Method, I think it was laundry detergent, and this tall bottle. They didn't make that scent anymore. So I found like, I don't know, maybe 10 of them at a Goodwill for $2 a piece. And I was like, there was nowhere on the internet. So I was like, should I just list one? And then when it sells, list the next one? Or should I list like quantity of 10 and maybe somebody will buy all of them? And would you believe somebody bought all of them? And she was local. She wasn't more than 20 miles away. And we talked about, meeting instead of shipping it and whatever. She was really busy. And so I just ended up shipping it. But she was thrilled. She was like, oh, I've got enough now for the rest of my life. I love this stuff. And
that's good.
Find it. They discontinued it. So it just depends. You could try it both ways and see.
So I have, I think one listing. So, and it probably depends on what it is as far as the condition. Like, cause I had a set of 8 glasses that, maybe one had a little chip or, they were in very, very good condition, but 1 or 2 of them had, very small issues. So I'm like, do I list 6 of them and then keep the other 2 aside and list them with their problems? Or do I list all of them and just list so I decided to list them in pairs, and I sold a pair, and now I'm down to the last 4, including the 2 with problems. So I think if I had it to do over, maybe I wouldn't do it that way. However, it's like I said, it's just learning. Like, maybe
there's
next
no
time.
right or wrong. And the issue with multiples is they really need to be exactly the same, because if you have 8 Christmas Coca-Cola glasses, and 2 of them have some kind of issue, and you ship it, and then the buyer can say item not as described because it's not exactly the same. So then you might want to just do a lot of 6 and say, okay, 2 of these have issues. There's different ways to do it. So
and the only other one that I have, I bought 30 made in USA bandanas, red, paisley bandanas, and they weren't in packaging, but they were never used. And I think I learned that it came from a mill somewhere around here, the fabric mills in the area. And so they're all the same, but when I go, and so I had 30 of them, and I think I've sold maybe about a dozen, some individually, some, lots of 6 or something. But as I go through them, I'm like, I really need to make sure every single one is as listed. So that makes me nervous, but they're not glassware. They're not, I have them all pictured, but not opened wide, and they're not used. So whatever flaws they have came from the manufacturing. So I feel like that's a little safer bet, and they're super easy to ship. So
Okay.
So
all right. Well, we're getting to the end here. So this is the part. Well, let me ask you one more thing. How many items do you have in your store?
Right now, about 225. Okay. And I keep setting myself goals to, increase that. I'm talking to you from my current inventory room, which is 7 feet by 9 feet. And I'm using, and I also have my photo box here next to me, like every inch of the space is being used. And this is manageable for now. I do see when I list more, I sell more. So as I ramp up, I have to be prepared for that. And there've been times where I'm not quite prepared for that.
Right.
So I'm sort of taking a measured approach to growing, but I think I would like to grow to maybe 500 to 1,000, somewhere in between there. Probably not more than that, unless I reevaluate and change my business goals.
Well, and for storage purposes, it depends on what it is. 1,000 silk scarves or pairs of
Right.
eyeglasses or Christmas ornaments, like that's not going to take up as much room as
Right.
1,000 overcoats or
Right. Right.
so it just
Right.
depends on how you arrange it. And
Right.
you know from listening that like I am constantly learning about smaller compact items like men's
Right.
ties and
Right.
baseball hats and all those things that don't take up much room. They're easy and fast to list.
Mm-hmm.
Because yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it does take more time to list a women's dress. You got to photograph that,
Right.
get the
Right.
measurements, but then like a baseball hat, they're all pretty much the same. They weigh the same.
Mm-hmm.
You just go to a listing, sell similar, put up new pictures, and they're very fast.
Right. Right.
And I feel like men's ball caps, women's too, are just
Mm-hmm.
they're kind of a disposable, consumable, because they do get
Right.
worn
Right.
out. And some people don't care if they're distressed and gross, but other people do.
Right. They want them
So
pristine.
it's like,
I do
oh,
have some, actually, I have like all the lightweight accessories and things on the high shelves, because
mhm,
I said I've used every space, and I have not listed them. I maybe have one or two hats listed, but I have a small bin that I have to, learn about and list. And even those small things that are, no pun intended, old hat to to a seasoned reseller. Um, they're a little bit of a challenge for me, for whatever reason. I don't know about how you measure it. Like I said, every sale for me is kind of a first.
right.
Um, I mean, I'm getting some, experience selling different things, and I probably will focus on things that I enjoy, or are easier.
Right. Okay.
um, so.
So let's move on to the last question for you. I'm not asking the same question to everybody, but
Mhm.
since you're newer
Uh-huh.
and you made it this far, what kind of advice would you give to people just starting? Because I know I have a lot of listeners who are preparing to do this as soon as they retire, or, they're going to do it later for whatever reason, like they have
Mhm.
all the stuff. So, what kind of advice would you give to those people who are like just ready to get going?
Yeah, well, I feel like it is a leap you have to make, and you have to sort of trust in yourself. Learn as much as you can right up front, but don't spend all your time learning. Like, uh, maybe learn about, I mean, you might actually have knowledge that you already have. So leverage that, and what you don't know, learn. So I had knowledge about glassware and some, vintage. I like vintage barware, and things like that. So I was always drawn to that in the thrift store. I like clothing, but I don't know much about it, kind of thing. So I started to learn more about it, but purchasing things that I already felt like I knew. So I think you just have to measure that. Like, don't be afraid to do something you've never done before, but don't, don't spend too much time, jump in, but be careful. Like, jump in with a life vest on.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, and I think people who, especially those coming from the corporate world, or maybe they've owned their own business and they're just,
mhm,
they get into analysis paralysis. And
mhm,
this isn't like that. Just consider it a giant online garage sale.
mhm,
Don't beat yourself up over, I should have put a higher price on that, because you're never going to know.
right.
People do that all the time, like, oh, this sold in 10 minutes. I should have priced it higher. Well, no, maybe they had an alert and it was the perfect price, and
Mhm.
you made the sale very quickly.
That's what they were looking for.
Don't look out the rear view mirror because you're not going that way. Look out the
Right,
front
right.
windshield, because you're never going to know what you could have sold it for. Stop shoulding on yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, I should have done this and I should have done that. That
Shoulda,
is
coulda, woulda.
totally not
Yeah.
productive. Nothing good will come of that. Just be better, do better, move forward, keep going.
Right.
and don't beat yourself up because, you know,
Right.
whether you're,
I just look at every mistake as a learning thing, or even it might not even be a mistake. It's just, you know,
it happened that way.
different. Yeah. Yeah.
Somebody could have
Yeah.
come
I was
along
talking to my
tomorrow or
son.
next week and paid more. And there's no way you're going to know
Mhm.
that. So just
Right.
be happy you got the sale and keep going.
Right. Right.
Good.
And I always, I know I'm not the first person to say it, but I did tell my son, the other day, it's better to regret something you have done than something you haven't.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, give it a try. And, you know, if it doesn't, you know, turn out the way you expected or hoped, you know, change something up and try again.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing, you know, but if you don't give it a try, you'll regret that and not make any progress. So,
Yeah. And that's exactly where I am in my life right now. It's just like, I'm going to go try that. If I don't
mhm,
like it, then at least I know I don't like it. You know,
mhm,
at least
mhm,
I've tried it, because I don't want to get to the end of my life and say, you know, I should have done this and why didn't I do that? And you're right. You regret more of the things you didn't do. Oh,
right. And maybe, you know, we have reached a certain age that, you know, that makes a lot of sense. And it's hard to get your head around that when you're, you know, 18 or 20 or,
yeah.
you
When
know,
I hit 50, I started thinking about, you know, what do I want the second half of my life to look
mhm,
like? What do I want to
mhm,
do? What kind of person do I want to be? And a lot of things shifted because, you
mhm,
know, I'm not going to do that anymore. I don't like it. If I
right.
don't love it, I'm not going to do it.
Yep.
So, um, it's okay to change, even if you've been doing something for 20 years. Just, no, I really don't like that. I'm going to do something
Mhm,
different. So,
yep. Yep.
anyway, okay. Well,
So,
what is on your schedule this afternoon? Are you thrifting? Are you
um,
listing?
I am listing. I have a few things to list and a few things to ship.
Well, thank you again for making time to come on and tell your very interesting stories. And you're not on Facebook that much, but maybe I will see you around Greenville.
Yeah, I will check in on there. But yes, we'll definitely see each other. I'm sure we'll cross paths.
Okay, well, it's good to see you again.
Thank you.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Thank you again, Leslie, for making time in your day to come on the podcast and chat. Since Leslie gave us a story about a painting, it is only appropriate to have today's trivia question be about a painting. So the question is, what is the most famous painting of all time? Here's some time to think it over. And this is a pretty easy one. The answer is, of course, the Mona Lisa. And a few fun facts about the most famous smiling lady. Mona Lisa was an actual person. Born in 1479, she lived in Florence, Italy. Her husband, Francesco del Giocondo, a rich silk merchant, asked Leonardo to paint her portrait around 1503. In Italy, the Mona Lisa is known as La Gioconda from Mona Lisa's married name. It took 4 years for Leonardo to complete the painting. The finished painting measures 30 by 21 inches, so it's not huge. In 2022, she was valued at $830 million. 10 million people a year view her at her home in the Louvre. And as of this recording in March 2023, the painting is 506 years old. So there is your free and unsolicited art lesson for the week. Okay, next week, my guest is a repeat offender, Zach, the self-proclaimed garbage man philosopher. Many of you remarked that he sounds like Clint Eastwood. He is back with more philosophizing and eBay stories, so make sure to tune in for that episode next week. I appreciate all of you out there listening. Feel free to email me or reach out on Facebook messaging. I love hearing from you. Stay positive and keep going. Until next time, bye everybody. Have a great week on eBay.